Her wealthy millionaire father-in-law gave her an envelope with a warning saying, "Don't let my son be there when you open it." Julian's face twisted with fury she had never seen before. Or perhaps it had always been there, hidden beneath the charming mask he wore so well. "You gold-digging little nobody." His voice dripped with venom. "You think you can walk away from me? From this family? You were nothing before I found you, and you will be nothing again." Violet stood perfectly still, watching the man she had loved for nearly a decade transform into a stranger before her eyes. But instead of shrinking, instead of apologizing, instead of doing what she had done for 5 long years, she felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been sleeping for far too long finally woke up. "You are right about one thing, Julian." Her voice was steady as stone. "I was never meant for this life, but not because I was not good enough for it. Because it was never good enough for me." She placed a cream-colored envelope on the desk between them, an envelope that had been pressed into her hands by a dying man, an envelope that contained secrets powerful enough to shatter everything Julian thought he controlled. "Your father gave me this before he died, and he warned me. He said, 'Do not let my son be there when you open it.' Now I understand why." Julian stared at the envelope like it was a snake coiled to strike. His face went pale. His hands began to tremble. "What is in there? What did he tell you?" "Everything, Julian. He told me everything. But before we get to that moment of confrontation, before we witness the unraveling of a marriage built on lies, we need to go back. Back to a hospital room where a billionaire lay dying. Back to a woman who had spent 5 years feeling invisible. Back to the moment when a single envelope changed the course of her entire life. What would you do if your dying father-in-law handed you an envelope and warned you not to let your husband see what was inside? Would you trust him? Would you be afraid of what you might discover? Or would you do what Violet did and tear that envelope open the moment you were finally alone? This is a story about secrets kept too long, about love that hides in silence, about betrayal that wears a wedding ring, and about a woman who had to lose everything she thought she wanted before she could find everything she actually needed. The fluorescent lights of St. Augustine Memorial Hospital hummed a persistent lullaby overhead, casting their sterile glow across the private suite where Marcus Ashford lay connected to an orchestra of beeping machines. Violet Torres Ashford stood at the doorway, clutching a paper cup of cold coffee she had forgotten to drink, watching the rise and fall of her father-in-law's chest beneath the thin hospital blanket. 5 years of marriage to Julian Ashford had taught her many things: how to navigate charity galas without tripping over her own inadequacy, how to smile through Evelyn Ashford's pointed comments about her quaint upbringing, how to shrink herself into something small enough to fit into the gilded cage of old money and older expectations. But nothing had prepared her for this moment, watching the man who had barely spoken a dozen words to her in half a decade fighting for his life. Mrs. Ashford, the attending physician, a distinguished woman with silver streaking her temples, approached with a clipboard pressed to her chest. "Your father-in-law is asking for you specifically." Violet blinked in confusion. "Me? Are you certain? His son is in the cafeteria. I can go get him." "He was very specific, Mrs. Ashford. He said he wanted to speak with you alone." The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible and yet undeniable. In 5 years, Marcus Ashford had never sought her out for anything. He had nodded at her across dinner tables, offered polite half-smiles at family gatherings, and otherwise existed in her periphery like a painting she could never quite bring into focus. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story of secrets, betrayal, and ultimate redemption, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you are going to want to see how this ends. And if you have ever felt undervalued or overlooked in a relationship, drop a comment below. I read every single one. Violet approached his bedside with careful steps, as though the marble floors of his hospital suite might crack beneath her weight. The room was more luxury hotel than medical facility. Original artwork on the walls, fresh flowers on every surface. A suite that cost more per night than Violet's childhood home had cost in total. Marcus's eyes fluttered open at her approach, those piercing gray eyes that had always seemed to look right through her. But today, something was different. Today, those eyes held intention. Violet. Her name emerged rough and broken from his lips, but there was strength beneath the weakness. "Sit down, please." She obeyed, settling into the chair beside his bed with the wariness of prey, sensing a predator nearby. Even diminished by tubes and wires, Marcus Ashford commanded attention. He had built an empire from nothing, a boy from the wrong side of town who had clawed his way to billions through sheer force of will. The newspapers called him ruthless. His competitors called him worse. Violet had simply called him silent. "I need you to listen," Marcus said, his voice gaining strength with each syllable. "And I need you to promise me something before I say what I have to say. Anything." The word came out automatically, the response of a woman trained to accommodate. "Do not let Julian be there when you open it." He pressed something into her hand, a cream-colored envelope, thick with contents she could not begin to guess. The paper felt heavy against her palm, weighted with secrets and intentions she could not fathom. "I do not understand." Violet turned the envelope over in her hands, searching for some indication of what it contained. "You will." Marcus's eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "When you read what is inside, you will understand everything. But you have to read it alone, Violet. Promise me." "I promise." He exhaled, and something loosened in his features that she had never seen before. Relief, perhaps, or something dangerously close to affection. For 5 years, she had believed this man was indifferent to her existence. Now, looking into his eyes, she was not so sure. "I was wrong about many things in my life." Marcus's voice grew softer, more intimate, as if sharing a confession he had held too long. "But the wrongest thing I ever did was let you believe I did not see you." Violet felt her heart stutter in her chest. "What do you mean?" "I watched you for 5 years, Violet. I saw how you tried to fit in, how you bent yourself into shapes that were never meant for you. I saw the fire in your eyes when you first came to dinner with Julian, and I watched that fire dim year after year." She did not know what to say. This was more words than Marcus had spoken to her in their entire acquaintance combined. "I saw Evelyn try to break you. I saw Julian take you for granted, and I stayed silent because I was a coward, because I was afraid of what speaking would cost me." Before Violet could process his words, before she could ask the 1,000 questions crowding her mind, Julian's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Father, you are awake." Julian strode into the room with all the polished confidence of a man who had never known want, never known the gnawing hunger of uncertainty. He was beautiful in the way marble statues are beautiful, perfect and cold, and fundamentally untouchable. "The doctor said you should not be exerting yourself. I was just talking to your wife." Marcus's eyes never left Violet's face, even as he addressed his son. Julian's gaze flicked to Violet with something she had learned to recognize over the years. Not quite suspicion, but not quite trust either. Something in between that kept her perpetually off balance. "Violet should let you rest." He extended his hand toward her, a command disguised as courtesy. "Come, darling. Mother is waiting in the family room." Violet slipped the envelope into her purse as she rose, feeling Marcus's eyes follow her movement. Their gazes met one final time, and in his weathered face she saw something that made her heart stutter in her chest. He was saying goodbye, not to the moment, but to something larger, something final. But to truly understand the weight of that envelope, to appreciate why it would shatter everything Violet thought she knew. We need to go back further. Back to the woman Violet was before she became an Ashford. Back to the girl who fell in love with a prince and discovered too late that his castle was made of ice. Violet Torres grew up in a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place where love was expressed through sacrifice rather than luxury. Her father worked double shifts at the factory so her mother could teach at the local public school. They did not have much, but what they had was real. Her childhood home was small. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen where her mother hummed while cooking and her father read the newspaper at a table that wobbled unless you put a folded napkin under one leg. The walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors arguing, and the heating never quite worked properly in winter. But there was warmth in that house that Violet would not fully appreciate until it was gone. Family dinners where everyone talked over each other, birthday celebrations with homemade cakes and handmade gifts, a mother who stayed up late helping with homework, a father who taught her to change a tire and balance a checkbook and never, ever let anyone make her feel small. Violet was smart. Everyone said so. Smart enough to earn scholarships. Smart enough to get into one of the most prestigious universities in the country on pure merit. Smart enough to know that she was swimming in waters far deeper than any she had known before. And then she met Julian Ashford. She was working in the university library, shelving books to help cover her expenses when he first approached her. He was impossibly handsome. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. eyes the color of expensive whiskey, a smile that made her forget how to breathe. "Excuse me." His voice was honey over gravel. "I am looking for a book on Renaissance art. Could you help me?" Violet had helped him find the book, and then she had helped him find another and another. By the end of the month, they were having coffee together. By the end of the semester, they were inseparable. Julian was charming in those early days, attentive in a way that made Violet feel like the center of the universe. He asked about her classes, her dreams, her family. He listened when she talked about her father's overtime shifts and her mother's dedication to her students. He seemed genuinely interested in the world she came from, even as he introduced her to his own. The first time she visited the Ashford estate, Violet nearly turned and ran. The driveway alone was longer than the street she grew up on. The house was not a house at all, but a mansion, all marble columns and perfectly manicured. Gardens and staff members who appeared silently to anticipate every need. Julian's mother, Evelyn, had greeted her with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "So you are the girl Julian has been spending so much time with." Her gaze traveled from Violet's discount store dress to her scuffed shoes. How refreshing to meet someone so unpolished. Violet had not understood then that this was not a compliment. She had not understood that Evelyn's every word was a calculated strike, designed to remind her of her place. She had only understood that Julian squeezed her hand and whispered that his mother would warm up eventually. She never did. Marcus Ashford had been present at that first dinner, seated at the head of the table like a king surveying his kingdom. He had nodded at Violet when they were introduced, offered a half-smile that revealed nothing, and then proceeded to ignore her for the rest of the evening. She had assumed his silence was judgment, agreement with his wife's assessment that Violet was not good enough for their son. It never occurred to her that silence could mean something else entirely. The courtship continued despite Evelyn's opposition. Julian proposed after graduation, presenting Violet with a ring that cost more than her parents' house. She said yes through tears of joy, believing that love would be enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. The wedding was a spectacle. 500 guests, most of whom Violet had never met. A designer gown that required 3 fittings. A venue so exclusive that it had a 2-year waiting list. Evelyn had planned every detail, presenting each choice to Violet as a fait accompli rather than a suggestion. Through it all, Violet's mother had held her hand and whispered a question that would haunt her for years to come. "Are you sure about this, Mija? Are you sure this is what you want?" Violet had been sure. She had been so very sure. The first year of marriage was a slow education in all the ways Violet did not belong. The charity galas where she did not know which fork to use. The dinner parties where conversation stopped when she approached. The way Evelyn introduced her as Julian's wife, as if she had no name of her own. She tried to adapt. She studied the rules of their world like she had once studied for exams. Which designers were acceptable, which topics were appropriate, how to smile without showing too much emotion, how to laugh without being too loud, how to exist without taking up too much space. Somewhere along the way, the fire in her eyes began to dim. Julian changed too, though so gradually that Violet did not notice until it was too late. The attentive boyfriend became a distracted husband. The late-night conversations became quick check-ins before he disappeared into his study. The romantic gestures became expensive gifts delivered by his assistant. He worked constantly. Board meetings, business trips, networking events that never seemed to include her. When he was home, he was on his phone, his laptop, his mind always somewhere else. Violet told herself this was normal. Told herself that all marriages went through phases. Told herself that once Julian's position at the company was secure, things would get better. They did not get better. By the 5th year of their marriage, Violet and Julian existed as polite strangers sharing a mansion. They slept in the same bed but rarely touched. They attended events together but rarely talked. They had become a performance of a marriage rather than the real thing. And through it all, Violet's family struggled. Her mother's medical bills mounted after a car accident left her with chronic back problems. Her brother's graduate school tuition kept increasing. Her father had passed away 3 years into her marriage, working overtime until the very end. Violet wanted to help. She had access to more money than her family had ever imagined. But something stopped her every time she tried to ask Julian. Pride, perhaps, or the fear of confirming what Evelyn had always believed about her. So she suffered in silence, watching her family struggle while surrounded by more wealth than they could spend in 10 lifetimes. She did not know that someone was watching her suffer. She did not know that help was coming from the most unexpected source. She did not know that Marcus Ashford had been protecting her all along. But we will get to that. First, we need to return to the hospital, to the moment when everything changed. The phone call came at 3:47 in the morning, shattering Violet's restless sleep like glass breaking. She fumbled for her phone, her heart already racing with the particular dread that accompanies calls in the dead of night. Julian was already awake beside her, already reaching for his own phone. His face was pale in the glow of the screen. It is father. His voice was flat, controlled, already calculating. He has collapsed. They are taking him to St. Augustine Memorial. The drive to the hospital was silent. Violet sat in the passenger seat of Julian's sports car, watching his profile in the passing streetlights. His jaw was tight. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. But his first words after hanging up at the hospital had not been about his father's condition. We need to call the lawyers first thing in the morning. The will needs to be reviewed before anything else. Violet had not responded. She had simply stared at the man she had married and wondered when he had become a stranger. The private wing of St. Augustine Memorial was everything a billionaire's family would expect. Marble floors, original artwork, staff members who appeared and disappeared with the silent efficiency of ghosts. Evelyn was already there when they arrived, immaculate even in crisis, accepting the condolences of doctors and administrators with practiced grace. Julian was immediately pulled into a swirl of activity. Doctors with updates, lawyers with documents, business associates with concerns about the company's stock price. The machinery of wealth and power did not pause for something as inconvenient as a medical emergency. And Violet was left alone, standing in the hallway, invisible as always, wondering why she had bothered to come at all. That was when the doctor found her. That was when she learned that Marcus was asking for her. Only her. Their conversation played on repeat in her mind during the days that followed. His words, his eyes, the weight of the envelope in her purse. I was wrong about many things in my life, but the wrongest thing I ever did was let you believe I did not see you. What had he meant? What had he seen? And what was in that envelope that was so important he had used his dying breath to ensure she would read it alone? Violet tried to open the envelope a dozen times in the 3 days after that conversation. Each time, something interrupted her. Julian appearing at her elbow with questions about funeral arrangements. Evelyn summoning her for discussions about social obligations. The constant stream of relatives and business associates who descended on the Ashford estate like vultures circling prey. The envelope burned in her purse, in her nightstand, in the hidden compartment of her jewelry box where she finally stashed it. A secret waiting to be told, a truth waiting to be heard. And then Marcus Ashford died. He passed quietly in the small hours of a Tuesday morning, with no fanfare and no audience. The nurses found him peaceful, his vital signs fading like a sunset into darkness. By the time Violet arrived at the hospital, the machinery of death had already begun to turn. The funeral was a spectacle worthy of the man's wealth and status. Dignitaries and celebrities, business titans and political figures, people who claimed to have been close friends despite not having spoken to Marcus in years. Violet observed the parade of false grief with growing disillusionment. Competitors pretending to be friends, distant, relatives suddenly appearing with tales of closeness that rang hollow. A performance of mourning that had nothing to do with the man in the casket. Evelyn played the grieving widow to perfection. Black designer dress, tasteful tears, a performance so polished it seemed rehearsed. She accepted condolences with the grace of a queen, never once letting her mask slip. Julian was already positioning himself as the heir apparent, shaking hands, making assurances, promising investors and board members that the transition would be seamless. His father was not yet in the ground, and he was already claiming the throne. Through it all, Violet felt genuinely alone. She found herself mourning a man she had barely known, replaying his final words in her mind, clutching the unopened envelope like a talisman. What had he wanted to tell her? What secrets had he taken to his grave? And why had he chosen her, of all people, to be the keeper of whatever truth that envelope contained? What would you do if someone handed you an envelope that might contain the truth about your entire marriage? Would you open it immediately, full of desperate need to know? Or would you be afraid of what you might find, letting it sit unopened while you gathered the courage to face whatever lay inside? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know what you would do. And if you are enjoying this story, hit that like button to help more people discover it. The reading of the will took place 3 days after the funeral. in the wood-paneled offices of the Ashford family lawyers. It was the first reading, the official one, and it went exactly as everyone expected. The bulk of Marcus's fortune went to Julian as the sole male heir. Evelyn received a generous provision for her lifestyle, along with ownership of the country house she loved. There were charitable donations, trust funds for various cousins and relatives, the standard disposition of a billionaire's estate. Violet was mentioned only once, in passing, as Julian's spouse. Nothing direct, nothing personal, just a clause ensuring that Julian's assets would remain protected in the event of divorce. She watched Julian's face as the lawyer read through the document, saw the satisfaction in his eyes, the barely concealed triumph. He had won. He had everything. Or so he thought. Violet noticed something that no one else seemed to see. A slight hesitation in the lawyer's voice when he reached certain passages. A quick glance in her direction that was hastily covered. A shuffling of papers that seemed unnecessary. Something was wrong. Or perhaps something was more right than anyone in that room realized. In the days after the reading, Violet noticed other things too. Strange occurrences that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Julian taking calls in private, hanging up abruptly when she entered the room. His voice sharp and angry, arguing with someone about something she could not quite hear. Evelyn meeting with lawyers who were not part of the usual family firm. Men in expensive suits who looked at Violet with barely concealed contempt. Whispered conversations that stopped the moment Violet approached. Meaningful glances exchanged between mother and son. A name mentioned once that made Julian's jaw tighten. Margot, his executive assistant, the woman who always seemed to be wherever Julian was. The woman whose hand lingered a moment too long when she passed him documents. The woman whose eyes followed him across rooms with an intensity that went beyond professional admiration. Violet had noticed Margot before, of course. Had wondered, in her darker moments, if there was something more between them. But she had pushed those thoughts away, telling herself she was being paranoid, insecure, ungrateful. Now, watching Julian's face when that name was mentioned, watching the way he quickly changed the subject, watching the guilt that flickered in his eyes before he could mask it, Violet knew her instincts had been right all along. But she still did not open the envelope. Not yet. Not while Julian hovered at her elbow and Evelyn watched her every move. Not while the house was full of relatives and lawyers and people who would report her every action to the family. She waited. And she watched. And she gathered her courage for what she knew was coming. The opportunity came 1 week after the funeral when Julian announced that he had to fly to Singapore for an emergency board meeting. Some crisis that required his personal attention. Some problem that could not wait. He kissed Violet's cheek as he left, the mechanical gesture of a man going through motions he had long since stopped caring about. His phone was already in his hand before his lips left her skin. How was the funeral aftermath? He asked absently, not really listening for her answer. Mother said you handled everything adequately. Adequately. That word would echo in Violet's mind for days. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of trying to fit in, 5 years of suppressing herself to meet their expectations, and the best she could earn was adequately. Evelyn departed the same day, announcing that she needed solitude to grieve. The country house, she said, the gardens and the quiet, the space to process her loss. Violet nodded and smiled and said all the right things, and inside, her heart was racing. For the first time in nearly 2 weeks, she was alone. She waited until evening, until the house was quiet and the staff had retired to their quarters. She poured herself a glass of wine she did not intend to drink. She locked the door of her private sitting room, the one space in the vast Ashford estate that felt remotely like her own. And then she retrieved the envelope from its hiding place in her jewelry box. Her hands trembled as she held it. Such a simple thing, really. Cream-colored paper, Marcus's handwriting on the front. Her name, nothing more. A moment of hesitation. Once she opened this, there was no going back. Whatever truth lay inside would change everything, one way or another. She thought of Marcus's eyes in that hospital room. The intensity, the regret, the words he had spoken that still echoed in her mind. I was wrong about many things in my life, but the wrongest thing I ever did was let you believe I did not see you. She broke the seal. Inside, she found a letter written in Marcus's precise script, along with a thick stack of documents that made her vision blur with confusion. Photographs, bank statements, legal papers, more pages than she could count, all of them organized with meticulous care. She began to read. Violet, if you are reading this, I am either dead or dying, and I have finally run out of time to be a coward. I have watched you for 5 years, and I have been silent for 5 years, and I have let my silence be mistaken for coldness or worse. That was my greatest failure among many. The words blurred as tears gathered in her eyes. She blinked them away and continued reading. What you are holding in your hands is proof of things I should have told you face to face, but never found the courage to say. I was afraid of what speaking would cost us both. But silence, I have learned, exacts its own terrible price. Let me start with what you deserve to know most. I know about your mother's hospital bills. I know about your brother's tuition. I know about every financial struggle your family has faced since you married my son. Violet's heart stopped. How did he know? She had never told anyone about her family's problems, had never asked for help, had never admitted weakness to anyone in this house. I know because I paid them, all of them, every bill, every debt, every emergency that threatened to drown the people you love. The letter shook in her hands. She read the paragraph again and again, certain she must be misunderstanding, but the documents did not lie. Bank transfers traced back to anonymous accounts that Marcus controlled, hospital bills marked paid in full, tuition checks that came from sources her family never questioned. She remembered her mother calling 6 months ago, crying with relief. The hospital had forgiven $80,000 in debt, she had said. A miracle, she had called it. A blessing. It had not been a miracle. It had been Marcus. Before you feel obligated or indebted, let me explain why. I did not do it for you, Violet. Not at first. I did it because I saw in you something I recognized. A fighter who refused to break, no matter how hard life pushed. I grew up poor, though everyone seems to forget that now. I remember what it feels like to choose between medicine and food, between heat and dignity. I could not watch someone with your spirit be crushed by the same forces that nearly crushed me. Violet pressed her palm against her mouth, stifling the sob that threatened to escape. Marcus Ashford, billionaire, titan of industry, had grown up poor, like her family, like everyone he had married into a world designed to forget. But over the years, my motives changed. I did it for you, because you loved my son in a way he did not deserve, with a steadfastness he had not earned. Because you tried so hard to belong in a world designed to reject you. Because you never once complained, never once asked for help, never once let us see you bleed. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she read words. From a dead man who had seen her more clearly than anyone alive. I should have told you. I should have welcomed you into this family the way you deserve to be welcomed. Instead, I let Evelyn's coldness speak for both of us, let Julian's selfishness go unchallenged. Let you believe you were alone in a house full of people who should have been your allies. But Marcus's letter was not finished. The tone shifted, and Violet felt a chill run down her spine. Now I must tell you the thing I have protected you from. The reason I instructed you to read this alone. Julian is having an affair. He has been for 3 years, with his executive assistant, a woman named Margot Sinclair. The words hit Violet like a physical blow. She had suspected. Of course she had suspected. But suspicion was one thing. Confirmation was another. I have documentation enclosed. Photographs, financial records, correspondence. Not because I want to cause you pain, but because you deserve the truth. You have always deserved the truth. Violet set down the letter and picked up the photographs with numb fingers. Julian and a stunning brunette in a restaurant, their heads close together. Julian and the same woman on a yacht, her hand on his chest. Julian and Margot in what was clearly an apartment, a home that Violet had, never seen, decorated with intimate touches that spoke of long acquaintance. The bank statements showed payments, rent for a penthouse apartment in the city, jewelry purchases, expensive vacations to places Julian had claimed were business trips. The dates stretched back 3 years. 3 years. That meant the affair had started during what Violet thought was the happiest period of their marriage. The year Julian had surprised her with a trip to Paris. The year he had told her he loved her more than ever. It had all been a lie. But there was more. Marcus's letter continued. And what came next made the affair seem almost trivial by comparison. More than that, Julian has been planning to divorce you. He and Evelyn have been consulting lawyers for months, building a case to leave you with nothing. They intended to claim you entered the marriage under false pretenses, that your family's financial struggles constituted a form of fraud. It is nonsense, of course, but with enough expensive lawyers and the right judge, nonsense can become legally binding. Violet stared at the letter in disbelief. Divorce. They were planning to divorce her. Not just end the marriage, but destroy her. Claim fraud. Take everything. Leave her with nothing but the shame of being cast out. The documents proved it. Emails between Julian and Evelyn discussing the Violet problem. Legal correspondence outlining strategies for minimizing her settlement. Notes from their lawyers about timing and evidence and public relations. They had been planning this for months, meeting in secret, consulting lawyers, building their case, all while Violet smiled and performed and tried so desperately to be the wife they wanted her to be. A cold fury began to build in her chest. Not the hot anger of betrayal, but something colder, harder, something that felt like power. But Marcus's letter was not finished. I have spent the last year quietly countering their efforts. The documents in this envelope include a new prenuptial agreement that supersedes the original, one that ensures you receive half of Julian's personal assets in the event of divorce, along with a direct inheritance from my estate that bypasses my son entirely. By the time you read this, my lawyers will have filed everything with the courts. Evelyn and Julian cannot touch what I have given you. It is yours, Violet, free and clear, regardless of what happens to your marriage. Violet's hands shook as she flipped through the legal documents. A new prenuptial agreement, dated and witnessed and bearing all the proper seals. A deed to a townhouse in the city, in her name alone. Investment accounts containing more money than she could have earned in 3 lifetimes of teaching. A direct inheritance of $50 million from Marcus's estate, protected by trusts and legal structures that Julian's lawyers could never penetrate. Marcus had not just warned her about the danger. He had protected her from it. He had spent the last year of his life, while his heart was failing and his time was running out, building a fortress around a woman his family despised. But I want you to understand something, and I want you to carry this with you long after you have forgotten my face. You do not need my money. You never did. What you need is permission to be the person you have been suppressing all these years. I watched you shrink yourself to fit into our world, and it broke my heart. The woman who walked into that first dinner, fierce and funny and refusing to be intimidated, she deserves to exist. She deserves to thrive. She deserves a life unencumbered by people who would diminish her light just to feel brighter themselves. Violet closed her eyes, feeling the weight of Marcus's words settle into her bones. He had seen her, the real her, the woman she had buried under years of accommodation and performance. I stayed silent because I was afraid of losing my son, even though I had lost him long before you came along. I was afraid of Evelyn's wrath, though her rage has been my constant companion for decades. I was afraid of dying alone, though in the end, dying alone is exactly what I did. Do not be afraid, Violet. Whatever you decide to do with this information, decide it freely. Stay with Julian if you choose, but stay with open eyes. Leave him if that is what your heart wants, and know that you will leave with the means to rebuild your life on your own terms. You gave my son 5 years of loyalty he did not earn. You gave this family grace it did not deserve. Now I am giving you something in return. The truth, the resources, and the freedom to become whoever you want to be. With respect and admiration I should have expressed years ago. Marcus. Violet sat in the gathering darkness of her sitting room, surrounded by the wreckage of her understanding, and felt something shift inside her chest. For 5 years she had believed she was alone in this marble mausoleum of a marriage, tolerated but never truly wanted. She had believed Marcus's silence was judgment, his distance was disdain. She had been wrong about everything. She read the letter again, and again, and again. Each reading revealed new layers of meaning. Each sentence contained depths she had not grasped on first encounter. The emotions cycled through her like waves. Grief for the man who had died without ever telling her the truth face to face. Rage at Julian and Evelyn for their calculated betrayal. Gratitude to Marcus for seeing what no one else had bothered to look for. Confusion about what to do next. And beneath all of it, something that felt almost like hope. Because for the first time in 5 years, Violet had options. Real options. She was not trapped anymore. She looked at the photographs again. Julian and Margot at dinner. Julian and Margot on vacation. Julian and Margot in their secret apartment, living a life Violet had never been invited to share. 3 years. For 3 years, he had looked her in the eye, and told her he loved her while he was building a life with another woman. She thought about all the signs she had missed, the late nights, the business trips, the distraction, the way he reached for his phone instead of reaching for her, the way Margot's name made his jaw tighten. She had known. Some part of her had always known. But she had pushed the knowledge away because she was not ready to face what it meant. Now she was ready. She looked at the legal documents outlining their divorce strategy, the emails where they discussed her like a problem to be solved, the notes from lawyers about how to leave her with nothing. 5 years of loyalty, 5 years of trying to belong, 5 years of shrinking herself to fit their expectations. And this was how they planned to repay her. Something broke inside Violet as she sat in the darkness. But it was not the kind of breaking that leaves you weaker. It was the kind of breaking that had to happen before something stronger could grow. The woman who had walked into that first Ashford dinner, fierce and funny and refusing to be intimidated, was still in there somewhere, buried under years of accommodation and performance, but not gone. Never gone. It was time to bring her back. Violet gathered the documents with careful hands. She organized them by category: evidence of the affair, evidence of the conspiracy, legal protections Marcus had put in place, financial resources that were now hers and hers alone. She made copies of everything, stored them in multiple locations, sent encrypted files to a secure email account she created specifically for this purpose. She was not going to be caught off guard again. Then she sat down and planned. She had options now, real options. She could confront Julian immediately, throw the evidence in his face, watch him scramble to explain. She could go to the lawyers, let them handle everything through official channels. She could leak the information to the press, destroy Julian's reputation, make him pay publicly for what he had done. But as she considered each path, she realized something important. She did not want revenge. Not really. Revenge was what people sought when they felt powerless, when they needed to prove their worth through someone else's suffering. Violet did not feel powerless anymore. She felt free. What she wanted was simple. She wanted out. She wanted to take what was rightfully hers and build a new life far away from the Ashfords and their toxic world. She wanted to become the person she had been before she let them convince her she was not enough. But first, she had to face Julian. Not for revenge, not for satisfaction, but because she deserved to see his face when he realized that the woman he had dismissed as inadequate had been watching all along. Violet was about to do something she had never done in 5 years of marriage. Stand up for herself. But how would Julian react when confronted with the truth? Would he beg for forgiveness? Threaten her? Try to manipulate her into staying? Before we find out, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment where you finally stood up for yourself after staying silent for too long? Share your story in the comments. You might inspire someone else to find their courage. And do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss what happens next. Julian returned from Singapore 4 days later, tanned and relaxed and completely oblivious to the fact that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse around him. He breezed into the house with his usual distracted energy already, reaching for his phone before he had fully crossed the threshold. His assistant was calling. His board was waiting. His important life was demanding his attention. He kissed Violet's cheek with the mechanical affection she had grown accustomed to. His lips barely touched her skin before he was moving past her, his mind already elsewhere. How was the funeral aftermath? He asked absently, not bothering to look at her as he scrolled through his messages. Mother said you handled everything adequately. There it was again. That word, adequately, as if she were a servant being evaluated rather than a wife being acknowledged. But this time, instead of the familiar sting of inadequacy, Violet felt something else entirely. Calm, focus, the quiet certainty of a woman who finally knew exactly what she wanted. Julian. Her voice was steady, controlled, different in a way that made him look up from his phone for the first time. We need to talk. Something in her tone caught his attention. He studied her face with the first real focus he had shown her in months. What he saw there made him uneasy, though he could not articulate why. She looked different, stood differently. There was something in her eyes that he did not recognize, something that looked almost like power. Of course, darling. His voice was careful now, wary. What is on your mind? Violet reached into her bag and withdrew the cream-colored envelope. She placed it on the desk between them with deliberate care. Julian stared at it like it was a snake coiled to strike. I know about Margot. The color drained from his face so quickly it was almost theatrical. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. A fish suddenly realizing it had been swimming in a net all along. I know about the divorce you have been planning. I know about the lawyers and the strategy and the plan to leave me with nothing. He scrambled to recover. His mind was racing. She could see it, searching for the right play, the right words to regain control. Violet, I do not know what you think you know, but I can explain. You do not need to explain. I have documentation, photographs, bank statements, emails between you and your mother discussing how to handle the Violet problem. His face went from pale to gray. Who told you? His voice was barely a whisper. Your father. My father has been dead for 2 weeks. He left me a letter and documentation, quite thorough documentation actually. For a long moment, Julian did not move, did not speak, did not breathe. His mind was visibly racing, recalculating, searching for some way to spin this, some angle to exploit. Then his expression shifted. The charming mask he wore so well slipped away, and Violet saw something beneath it she had never seen before. Something ugly, something that had been hiding all along. That manipulative old bastard. His voice was cold with fury. He had no right to interfere in our marriage, no right to share our private business with you. Your private business. Violet's voice remained steady. You mean your 3-year affair? Your secret apartment? Your plan to destroy me legally and leave me with nothing? Julian's eyes narrowed. The man she had married, the man she had loved, disappeared entirely. In his place was a stranger, someone calculating and cold and capable of anything. You do not understand how things work in our world, Violet. You never have. That is the problem. You were never meant for this life. You are right about that. Violet stood taller. I was never meant for this life, but not because I was not good enough for it. Because it was never good enough for me. Julian laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that bore no resemblance to the charming chuckle that had once made her heart flutter. You think you can walk away from me? From this family? You were nothing before I found you, and you will be nothing again. Actually, I will be quite comfortable. Your father's lawyers have already filed the revised prenuptial agreement. By its terms, I am entitled to half your personal assets in the event of divorce. His face contorted with rage. That is not possible. The original prenuptial was ironclad. Apparently not. Violet reached into the envelope and withdrew the legal documents. Marcus hired his own team of lawyers, the best in the country. They found several provisions in the original agreement that made it vulnerable to revision, and the new terms are now a matter of public record. Julian snatched the papers from her hand, scanning them with increasingly frantic eyes. This cannot be legal. I will fight this. My mother's lawyers will tear this apart. Your mother's lawyers have already received copies. I understand they are quite displeased with the situation, but apparently Marcus anticipated that. The documents are airtight. Julian threw the papers down on the desk with a violent gesture. His hands were shaking. His jaw was tight with barely contained fury. And your inheritance? He spat. Let me guess. He left you money, directly, bypassing me entirely. $50 million, plus a townhouse in the city, plus investment accounts that I did not even know existed. All of it protected by trusts and legal structures that your lawyers cannot touch. She watched Julian's face as the reality of his situation sank in. For the first time since she had known him, he looked genuinely afraid, not of losing her. He had never really valued her enough for that, but of losing control, of being outmaneuvered, of discovering that the woman he had dismissed as inadequate had been holding all the cards all along. You gold-digging little nobody. His voice was venomous now, all pretense of civility abandoned. You think you can take what is mine? You think you can destroy everything I have built? I do not want to destroy anything, Julian. I just want out. Then get out. Take your money and your townhouse and leave. I intend to. But I will also be taking half your personal assets as the new agreement specifies, and I will be keeping all the documentation your father provided, just in case I ever need it. What does that mean? It means that if you or your mother try to fight this, if you try to drag this out in court or destroy my reputation or make my life difficult in any way, I will release everything to the press. She watched his face cycle through rage, calculation, and finally reluctant acceptance. The affair, the divorce conspiracy, the way your family has treated me for 5 years. Your investors would be fascinated, I am sure. Your board of directors even more so. And the public tends to take a dim view of cheating husbands who try to defraud their wives. Julian was silent for a long moment. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface, but she could see him calculating, weighing his options, realizing that he had lost. What do you want? His voice was flat, defeated. I want half your personal assets, as specified in the new prenuptial. I want my inheritance released immediately. I want the divorce finalized quickly and quietly, with no games and no delays. And if I refuse, then I release everything to the press, and then we will see whose reputation survives. The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled to its breaking point. Violet watched Julian's face cycle through rage, calculation, and finally bitter acceptance. You will regret this. I have regretted every day of the last 3 years, Julian. Tonight, finally, I have nothing left to regret. She picked up the envelope and walked toward the door. Then she paused and looked back at the man she had once loved more than anything in the world. Your father asked me to promise him something before he died. He asked me not to let you be there when I opened that envelope. At the time, I did not understand why. Now I do. Julian said nothing. His face was a mask of barely contained fury. He knew what was inside, Violet continued. He knew what you were planning, and he knew that if you found out before I did, you would destroy the evidence and I would never learn the truth. Still nothing, just that cold, hateful stare. He protected me, Julian. Your own father protected me from you. And that tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. She walked out of the study and did not look back. Behind her, she heard the sound of glass shattering, Julian throwing something against the wall, losing control of the anger he had barely been containing. But she kept walking. Through the house she had tried so hard to make a home. Past the art and furniture Evelyn had chosen to remind her of her place. Out the front door and into the cool night air. She was free. She did not have everything yet. The lawyers still had to finalize the settlement. The paperwork still had to be processed. The divorce still had to be granted. But she was free. In her heart, where it mattered most, she was finally free. She stood on the front steps of the Ashford mansion and looked up at the stars. The same stars she had wished on as a little girl, dreaming of a life full of love and adventure. The same stars that had watched over her through 5 years of slowly losing herself. She had thought those dreams were dead. She had thought the woman who dreamed them had been replaced by someone smaller, quieter, more acceptable to people who would never accept her no matter how hard she tried. But the dreamer was still there, bruised and battered and buried under years of accommodation and performance, but not gone, never gone. It was time to let her out again. Violet walked down the long driveway, leaving the Ashford estate behind her. With each step, she felt lighter, freer, more like the woman she was always meant to be. She had a long road ahead of her, lawyers and paperwork, and the inevitable battle with Evelyn, who would not take this news quietly. Public scrutiny and tabloid headlines, and the judgment of a world that loved to see marriages fall apart. But she also had something she had not had in years. Hope, real hope, based not on other people's approval, but on her own strength. Marcus had given her more than money and protection. He had given her permission to become who she really was. And she was not going to waste that gift. Word of Violet's confrontation with Julian reached Evelyn Ashford within hours. The household staff, loyal to the family for decades, had witnessed the aftermath. The shattered glass, Julian's rage, Violet walking out the front door with her head held high. By midnight, Evelyn's phone was ringing with reports from her network of informants. By dawn, she was racing back from the country house, her grief forgotten in the face of a more urgent crisis. She arrived at the Ashford estate like a storm rolling in from the sea. Her driver barely had time to open her door before she was striding toward the house, her heels clicking against the cobblestones with military precision. Julian was waiting for her in the study, looking nothing like the polished heir she had spent decades grooming. His tie was loose, his hair was disheveled. There was a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the desk beside him. Tell me everything. Evelyn's voice was ice. Tell me exactly what happened. He told her. The envelope, the letter, the documentation Marcus had gathered, the legal protections he had put in place without anyone's knowledge. With each revelation, Evelyn's face grew harder. Her eyes grew colder. By the time Julian finished, she looked like a woman carved from marble. That foolish old man. Her voice was quiet, but there was venom beneath the calm. "He spent his dying months undermining everything we built, everything we planned. The lawyers say the documents are legitimate." Julian's voice was hollow. "The new prenuptial supersedes the original. Her inheritance is protected by trusts we cannot access. Father thought of everything. Then we will find something he did not think of." Evelyn began to pace, her mind already calculating. There must be something, some vulnerability, some angle of attack. "She has copies of everything, Mother. Photographs of Margot and me. Emails between us about the divorce strategy. If we fight her publicly, she will release all of it. Let her." Evelyn waved a dismissive hand. "We have survived scandals before. This is different." Julian's voice cracked. "The board is already nervous about the transition. If this comes out, if they see evidence of an affair and a conspiracy against my wife, they will lose confidence. The stock price will drop. Investors will flee." Evelyn stopped pacing. For the first time, something like fear flickered in her eyes. "She has us trapped." Julian's voice was bitter. "Father made sure of it." For a long moment, Evelyn said nothing. She stood perfectly still, processing the situation, calculating her options. Then her spine straightened and her chin lifted, and the fear disappeared behind the mask she had worn for decades. "Then, we negotiate." Her voice was crisp. "We give her what the agreement requires. We finalize the divorce quickly and quietly, and we make sure she understands that any attempt to damage this family further will be met with consequences." "What kind of consequences?" "The kind that last." Evelyn's eyes were cold. "She may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. No one humiliates this family and walks away unscathed." 2 days later, Evelyn requested a meeting with Violet. Her tone was civil, almost pleasant, as if they were discussing dinner arrangements rather than the dissolution of a marriage. Violet agreed. She had nothing to hide and nothing to fear. Whatever Evelyn threw at her, she was ready. They met at the Ashford estate, in the formal sitting room where Evelyn had spent 5 years reminding Violet of her inadequacy. The room was beautiful in that cold, museum-like way that characterized everything the Ashfords touched. Priceless artwork on the walls, antique furniture arranged with geometric precision, fresh flowers that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Evelyn was already seated when Violet arrived, positioned in the chair that gave her the most commanding view of the room. She wore black, still performing the role of grieving widow. But her eyes held no grief, only calculation. "Please sit." Evelyn gestured to a chair across from her. "We have much to discuss." Violet sat, but she did not shrink into the cushions the way she once would have. She sat straight and tall, meeting Evelyn's gaze without flinching. "I must say, I underestimated you." Evelyn's voice was silk over steel. "All these years, I thought you were simply a social climber who got lucky. I never imagined you were capable of such calculation. I did not calculate anything." Violet's voice was steady. "Your husband gave me information. I acted on it. And you expect me to believe you had no idea? That Marcus chose you as his confidant by pure chance? I do not expect you to believe anything. But the truth is that Marcus and I barely spoke during the 5 years I was married to your son. Until his final days, I thought he was as indifferent to me as everyone else in this family." Evelyn studied her for a long moment, searching for cracks, looking for weaknesses, finding none. "Very well. Let us speak plainly. You have documentation that could damage this family's reputation. We have resources that could make your life very difficult. Neither of us benefits from a prolonged war. So I propose a truce. I am listening. You will receive everything the new prenuptial agreement specifies. Half of Julian's personal assets, your inheritance from Marcus, the townhouse. The divorce will be finalized within 30 days. In exchange, you will sign a non-disclosure agreement preventing you from ever speaking publicly about Julian's affair or our private family matters." Violet considered the offer. It was more than fair. It was exactly what she wanted. But something stopped her from accepting immediately. Something in Evelyn's eyes, that calculating gleam that suggested she was already planning her next move. "And if I refuse the non-disclosure agreement, then we will fight you in court. Every provision of the new prenuptial will be challenged. Your inheritance will be tied up in litigation for years. And while the lawyers argue, we will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are." "What kind of person is that?" "A gold digger." Evelyn's smile was sharp as glass. a nobody who married above her station and manipulated a dying man to steal what she could not earn. It may not be true, but truth is remarkably flexible when you have enough money to shape it. Violet felt the familiar sting of Evelyn's words, the implication that she was lesser, that she did not belong, that she had somehow tricked her way into a world where she was not welcome. But this time, the sting faded quickly, because Violet knew something Evelyn did not. She did not care anymore. "You can try." Violet's voice was calm, "but I have documentation of everything. The affair, the conspiracy, the emails where you and Julian discussed how to destroy me. If you want a public battle, I am prepared to give you one." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "You would destroy my son's reputation after everything this family has given you? Your family has given me nothing except 5 years of feeling inadequate. Your son gave me nothing except lies and betrayal. And you have given me nothing except contempt from the moment I walked through your door." The words hung in the air between them. For the first time since Violet had known her, Evelyn seemed genuinely surprised, as if she had never considered that her cruelty might have consequences. "I will sign your non-disclosure agreement," Violet continued, "not because I am afraid of you, but because I do not want to spend the next 5 years fighting in court. I want to move on with my life. I want to forget this family ever existed." She leaned forward, meeting Evelyn's eyes with an intensity that made the older woman flinch. "But understand this. If you or Julian try to interfere with my life after the divorce is final, if you spread rumors, or damage my reputation or make my existence difficult in any way, I will release everything. And I will make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of people the Ashfords really are." Evelyn was silent for a long moment. Violet could see the war playing out behind her eyes. Pride versus pragmatism. The desire to crush this upstart versus the fear of what it might cost. Finally, pragmatism won. "Very well." Evelyn's voice was clipped. "We have an agreement." She extended her hand, and Violet shook it briefly. The touch was cold and perfunctory. Two adversaries acknowledging a ceasefire rather than a peace. "One more thing." Evelyn's voice stopped Violet as she turned to leave. "Marcus was a fool to trust you. He spent his dying days protecting a woman who was never worthy of his concern." Violet paused at the door. She looked back at the woman who had made her feel small for 5 years, and she felt nothing but pity. "Your husband saw something in me that you never bothered to look for. Maybe that says more about you than it does about me." She walked out without waiting for a response. During the weeks that followed, Violet learned that she was not the only one affected by the revelations in Marcus's envelope. Margot Sinclair, Julian's mistress, attempted to contact her several times. Phone calls, emails, even a handwritten letter delivered to the townhouse Marcus had left her. Violet read the letter with detached curiosity. Margot claimed she had not known about the divorce conspiracy. She said she genuinely loved Julian and believed he was going to leave Violet voluntarily. She apologized for any pain she had caused and asked Violet to understand that she was a victim too. Violet set the letter aside without responding. She did not hate Margot. She did not have the energy for hatred anymore. Margot was Julian's problem now. The woman who had spent 3 years believing she was his future would soon discover what it meant to be part of his present. Based on everything Violet knew about Julian, Margot's reign would be brief. He would grow bored with her the same way he had grown bored with Violet. He would find someone new, someone younger, someone who had not yet seen behind his charming mask. And Margot would learn what Violet had learned, that loving Julian Ashford was a losing game. Despite everyone's best efforts to keep the situation quiet, rumors began to leak. Someone on the household staff talked to a tabloid reporter. A lawyer's assistant gossiped at a cocktail party. A distant Ashford relative sold a story for cash. Within a month, the headlines began. Ashford heir's secret love nest. Billionaire's widow left fortune to daughter-in-law. Society marriage crumbles amid affair allegations. The stories were incomplete, filled with speculation and half-truths, but they were damaging enough. Julian's reputation took a hit. The company's stock price wobbled. Evelyn's social standing was questioned by women who had envied her for decades. Through it all, Violet remained silent. She honored the non-disclosure agreement, refusing to speak to reporters or confirm any details. She let the rumors swirl around her without adding fuel to the fire. Partly this was strategy. She had agreed to silence, and she would keep her word. But partly, it was something deeper. She simply did not care about the Ashfords anymore. Not about Julian's reputation, not about Evelyn's social standing, Not about any of the petty dramas that had consumed her attention for 5 years. She had better things to do with her energy. The settlement was finalized in record time. Evelyn's lawyers, faced with the choice between a quick resolution and a prolonged public battle, chose speed. Violet received half of Julian's personal assets, a substantial sum that would have seemed unimaginable to the girl who had grown up in a 3-bedroom house with a wobbling kitchen table. She received her inheritance from Marcus, $50 million, protected by trusts and legal structures that would keep it safe for generations. She received the townhouse, a modest property by Ashford standards, but perfect for her needs. 3 bedrooms, a small garden, a kitchen where she could cook meals for herself. And she received, most importantly, her freedom. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by a courier who had no idea what significance they held. Violet signed them at her kitchen table, using a pen her mother had given her when she graduated from high school. Then she poured herself a glass of wine and sat in her garden, watching the sun set over her new life. She was officially, completely, legally free. No sadness, no regret, only relief so profound it took her breath away. She thought about the woman who had walked into that first Ashford dinner, so full of hope and love. She mourned for that woman briefly, for her innocence and her optimism, but she did not miss the woman she had become in that house. The shrinking, accommodating, perpetually inadequate wife who had tried so desperately to fit into a world that did not want her. That woman was gone now, and in her place was someone stronger, someone wiser, someone ready to build a life that actually belonged to her. The weeks after the divorce were a period of rediscovery. Violet had spent so long molding herself into what the Ashfords wanted that she had forgotten what she actually liked. She started small, cooking meals she wanted to eat instead of dishes that would impress dinner guests, reading books for pleasure instead of homework for social conversations, taking walks without a schedule, letting her feet carry her wherever they wanted to go. She reconnected with friends she had neglected during her marriage, women she had known in college who had watched her disappear into the Ashford world and wondered if they would ever see her again. They welcomed her back without judgment. They listened to her story without interruption. They reminded her of who she had been before Julian, and they helped her imagine who she might become now. She visited her family. Her mother wept when she saw her, not with sadness, but with relief. Mija. Her mother held her face in both hands, studying her with eyes that had always seen her clearly. There you are. There is my girl. I am sorry, Mama, for all of it, for staying so long, for not asking for help, for pretending everything was fine when it was not. Her mother shook her head. You have nothing to apologize for. You were trying to make a life. You were trying to love someone. There is no shame in that. I should have listened to you. That day before the wedding, when you asked if I was sure, I should have listened. Would you have heard me if I spoke louder? Her mother's voice was gentle. Sometimes we have to learn things for ourselves. The important thing is that you learned. The important thing is that you found your way back. They sat together in the kitchen where Violet had grown up, drinking coffee and talking for hours. Her mother told her about the bills that had been mysteriously paid, the hospital, debts that had vanished, the tuition checks that had appeared from nowhere. I always wondered where that money came from. Her mother's eyes glistened with tears. I prayed it was not something illegal. I prayed we were not accepting help from bad people. It was from Marcus. Violet's voice was soft. My father-in-law. He was helping us the whole time. He saw that we were struggling, and he did something about it. Why? Because he remembered what it was like to struggle. Because he saw something in me that no one else in that family bothered to look for. Her mother was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Then she reached across the table and took Violet's hand. He was a good man. To do that for strangers. To care for people he did not have to care about. He was. Violet felt her eyes fill with tears. I just wish I had known. I wish we could have been friends. I wish I could have thanked him. You can still thank him. Her mother squeezed her hand. By living a good life. By becoming who you were meant to be. That is how we thank people who believe in us. By proving them right. Violet thought about her mother's words for days afterward. By proving them right. Marcus had believed in her. Had seen something in her that 5 years of Ashford conditioning could not extinguish. Had spent his final months protecting a woman who had no idea she needed protection. How could she honor that gift? How could she prove him right? The answer came to her slowly, then all at once. Violet had resources now, more money than she could spend in 10 lifetimes, more security than she had ever imagined. But money alone was not purpose. Money alone would not fill the void that 5 years of shrinking had created. She thought about Marcus, about his journey from poverty to wealth, about the hungry kid who had worked 3 jobs and clawed his way to the top. She thought about herself, about the scholarship student who had believed education could change her life, about how close she had come to being crushed by circumstances beyond her control. She thought about all the kids out there who were just like she had been, bright and determined and full of potential, but lacking the resources to reach it. Kids who would be told, as she had been told, that they were not meant for anything more than the circumstances of their birth. What if she could help them? What if she could take the gift Marcus had given her and multiply it? What if she could build something that would outlast her own lifetime? The idea crystallized into a vision, a foundation dedicated to educational access, scholarships for students who could not afford tuition, tutoring programs for kids who needed extra support, safe spaces where young people could dream big and find the resources to make those dreams real. She would call it the Marcus Ashford Foundation for Educational Access, a fitting tribute to the man who had seen her potential when no one else bothered to look. Violet threw herself into the work with an intensity she had not felt in years. She met with educators who had dedicated their lives to serving under-resourced communities. She consulted with community leaders who knew what their neighborhoods actually needed. She talked to potential donors who shared her vision of a more equitable world. She designed programs based on her own experience, scholarship opportunities that did not just cover tuition, but also provided mentorship and support, tutoring services that met students where they were instead of where they were supposed to be, career guidance that opened doors to professions students might never have considered. The first community center opened 6 months after her divorce was finalized. It was located in her old neighborhood, in a renovated building that had once been a failing grocery store. The space was bright and welcoming, filled with books and computers and comfortable chairs where students could study. On opening day, Violet stood in the doorway and watched young people stream through the entrance. Teenagers carrying backpacks, elementary students holding their parents' hands, kids who reminded her of herself at their age, full of potential and hungry for opportunity. This was why Marcus had protected her. This was what he had seen when he looked at the scared young woman at his dinner table. Not just who she was, but who she could become. The foundation grew faster than Violet had imagined. Word spread through the community about the programs, about the scholarships, about the woman behind it all. Parents told other parents, teachers told other teachers. Students who received help told their friends. Within a year, there were waiting lists for every program. Violet expanded. A second center in another underserved neighborhood. A third, a fourth. Partnership programs with local schools, college prep courses for high school juniors, resume workshops for young adults entering the job market. Each initiative was built on the same principle: meet people where they are, give them the resources they need, believe in their potential even when no one else does. The work was exhausting, exhilarating, more fulfilling than anything Violet had ever done. For the first time in years, she felt like herself, not the diminished version who had shrunk to fit the Ashford world, not the accommodating wife who had suppressed her opinions to keep the peace. The real Violet, the one who had won scholarships through sheer determination, the one who had walked into that first Ashford dinner with fire in her eyes. That woman had never died. She had just been sleeping. And now she was awake. Some of the students who came through the Foundation's programs reminded Violet so strongly of her younger self that it hurt. There was Maria, a high school junior whose single mother worked 2 jobs to keep them housed. Maria was brilliant, top of her class despite working part-time to help with bills. But college had seemed impossible until the Foundation scholarship program opened doors she had never imagined. There was David, a middle schooler who had been labeled troubled because he could not sit still in class. The Foundation's tutoring program discovered he was not troubled at all. He was bored. He was so far ahead of his classmates that traditional instruction could not hold his attention. With the right challenges, he blossomed. There was Jasmine, a young mother who had dropped out of high school to care for her daughter. The Foundation's GED program gave her a second chance. The career counseling program helped her find a path forward. Last Violet heard, she was studying to become a nurse. Each success story was proof that Marcus had been right. That potential existed everywhere, if only someone bothered to look for it. That resources and opportunity could transform lives. But the students gave Violet something too. They gave her purpose. They gave her connection. They gave her a reason to keep building when the work got hard. One afternoon, a teenage girl asked Violet for help with an essay assignment. The topic was someone who changed your life. "Miss Violet," the girl said, her pen hovering over her notebook, "I do not know what to write. I cannot think of anyone important enough." Violet pulled up a chair beside her. "Tell me about your family. Tell me about the people who have helped you get where you are." The girl thought for a moment. Then she began to talk about her grandmother, a woman who had worked as a cleaning lady for 40 years, who had sacrificed everything so her children could have opportunities she never had, who showed love not through grand gestures, but through daily acts of service. "She never tells me she believes in me." The girl's voice was soft. "But she works double shifts so I can focus on school. She walks me to the bus stop every morning even though her knees hurt. She saves her money so I can have the books I need. That sounds like someone who changed your life to me, but she never says it. She never tells me I'm special or that I can do great things." Violet smiled. "Some people show love loudly in ways the world can see and measure, but other people show love quietly, through actions instead of words. Your grandmother may not tell you she believes in you, but she shows you every single day." The girl nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. She bent her head and began to write. Violet watched her for a moment, feeling her own eyes sting with recognition. Marcus had been that kind of person, the kind who showed love through actions rather than words, who protected without seeking credit, who gave without expecting anything in return. She understood him now in a way she never could have before, understood why he had stayed silent for so long, understood the fear and the regret and the desperate hope that had driven him to write that letter. He had wanted to be seen, not as the billionaire or the titan of industry, but as the boy from the wrong side of town who had never forgotten where he came from, as the father who had failed his son but refused to fail his daughter-in-law, as the man who believed in second chances because he had needed so many himself. Violet had seen him, too late perhaps, but she had seen him, and every day, through the foundation that bore his name, she proved that his faith had not been misplaced. A year after the divorce was finalized, Violet visited Marcus's grave for the first time. The Ashford family plot was located in a private cemetery outside the city. Rolling green hills, ancient oak trees, headstones that cost more than most people's houses. Marcus's marker was simple compared to some of the more elaborate monuments around it. Just his name, his dates, and a single line of text that Evelyn had probably chosen without much thought. Beloved husband and father. Violet stood before the grave for a long time, not speaking, just being present. The wind rustled through the oak trees. Birds called to each other in the branches. The world continued its eternal turning. Finally, she spoke. "I read your letter." Her voice was quiet, meant only for him. "I read it so many times I have it memorized, and I need you to know that I understand now. Everything you did, everything you could not say." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "You were right about me. I was shrinking. I was letting them convince me I was not enough, and I do not know if I would have ever found my way out without your help." A tear slipped down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. "But you were wrong about one thing. You said you were afraid of dying alone, and maybe technically that is what happened. But you were not alone, Marcus. Not really. You had me, even if neither of us knew it. You had all the people you helped over the years. You had the legacy you built, not the business legacy, but the human one." She reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. The first graduating class of the Marcus Ashford Foundation Scholarship Program. 15 students, grinning at the camera, holding acceptance letters to colleges they never thought they could attend. "I wanted to show you this. These kids are going to change the world someday. And it is because of you. Because you believed in a woman who needed someone to believe in her. Because you gave me the resources to pass that belief along." She propped the photograph against his headstone. "I am going to keep building, keep helping, keep proving that you were right to trust me. And every time one of those kids graduates or gets a job or helps someone else, that is your legacy too." She stood in silence for another long moment. Then she bent and pressed her palm against the cold stone of his headstone. "Thank you, Marcus, for seeing me, for protecting me, for giving me permission to become who I was always meant to be." She walked away lighter than she had felt in years. Violet's life after the divorce looked nothing like her life during it. She lived in the townhouse Marcus had left her, not because she could not afford something grander, but because she did not want something grander. The space was hers, decorated with things she chose, filled with books she wanted to read and art that made her happy. She worked constantly, but it was work that fed her soul instead of draining it. The foundation expanded to 12 community centers across the city. Partnerships with universities and corporations brought in resources she could not have generated alone. The waiting lists grew shorter as capacity increased. She dated occasionally, but she was not looking for rescue. The men she spent time with were kind and interesting, but she no longer needed someone to complete her. She was already complete. She had friends who knew the real her, women who had stuck by her through the Ashford years and women she had met since. They gathered for dinners and walks and long conversations about everything and nothing. She spoke her mind now, took up space, no longer shrunk herself to fit other people's expectations. The fire that had been dimming for 5 years burned bright again. One evening, sitting in her garden as the sun set, Violet reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had spent 5 years believing she was not enough, not pretty enough, not polished enough, not Ashford enough. She had measured herself against standards that were designed to make her fail. It had taken a dying man's letter to show her the truth. She had always been more than enough. She just needed to believe it. The envelope Marcus had given her had not just contained secrets and money. It had contained something far more valuable. Permission to stop shrinking. Permission to stop apologizing. Permission to stop waiting for someone else to validate her worth. She thought about all the women out there who were going through what she had gone through, trapped in relationships that diminished them, surrounded by people who made them feel small, believing they deserved the treatment they received because they had been told it for so long. She wished she could reach through time and space and tell them what she had learned, that their worth was not determined by whether others saw them, that the right people would recognize their value without requiring them to shrink. That freedom was possible, even when it seemed impossibly far away. Maybe that was another form of legacy, not just the foundation and the scholarships and the community centers, but the story itself, the proof that it was possible to lose everything you thought you wanted and find everything you actually needed. One afternoon at the community center, a young girl looked up from her homework and asked Violet a question. "Miss Violet, why do you do this? Why do you help people like us?" Violet set down the paper she was reviewing and gave the girl her full attention. "Because someone once helped me when I did not even know I needed it. And because everyone deserves a fair chance. Were you like us?" The girl's eyes were curious. "Did you have to struggle?" "I did. When I was your age, my family did not have much money. I worked hard in school because I knew education was my way out, but I almost got lost along the way. I almost forgot who I was." "What made you remember?" Violet smiled. "Someone who believed in me. Someone who saw my potential even when I could not see it myself. He gave me the resources and the freedom to become who I was always meant to be." "Is that why you started this place? To be that person for other people?" "Exactly. Because I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to be told you are not good enough, to struggle alone when the world seems designed to keep you down. And I know how much difference it makes when someone reaches out a hand." The girl was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she said something that made Violet's heart swell. "I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help people who feel like I feel." Violet reached out and squeezed the girl's hand. "You already are like me. You are working hard and dreaming big and refusing to give up. And someday, when you have the resources, you will help others too. That is how we change the world. One person at a time, each of us reaching back for the person behind us." The girl smiled and returned to her homework with renewed focus. Violet watched her for a moment, feeling the full weight of everything that had brought her to this place. She had lost a marriage, lost a husband, lost 5 years of her life to a family that never wanted her. But she had gained something infinitely more valuable. She had gained herself. The woman who had walked into that first Ashford dinner, fierce and funny and refusing to be intimidated, was not just back. She was stronger, wiser, tempered by fire into something unbreakable, and she was using that strength to light fires in others. If Violet's story touched your heart, I would love to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done if you received that envelope. Would you have opened it immediately, desperate to know the truth? Or would you have been afraid of what you might find? And if you believe in second chances, in finding your worth, in building a life that reflects your true self, subscribe to this channel. I share stories like this every week, stories about love, loss, redemption, and the courage to become who you were meant to be. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are enough, just as they are. Sometimes a story is exactly what someone needs to find their own strength. What can we learn from Violet's story? We can learn that silence is not always indifference. Sometimes it is protection, or fear, or love that does not know how to speak. Marcus watched Violet for 5 years without saying a word, but his actions spoke louder than any declaration could have. We can learn that the people who diminish us often do so because they recognize our light and feel threatened by it. Evelyn spent 5 years trying to make Violet feel small, not because Violet was inadequate, but because Evelyn could not stand to be outshone. We can learn that our worth is not determined by whether others see us. It is determined by whether we see ourselves. Violet spent years waiting for the Ashfords to validate her, when the validation she needed could only come from within. We can learn that sometimes the greatest betrayal leads to the greatest freedom. If Julian had been a faithful husband, if the Ashfords had welcomed her into their family, Violet might have spent her whole life shrinking to fit their expectations. It was the pain of discovery that set her free, and we can learn that it is never too late to become who we were meant to be. Violet was in her 30s when she finally found her path. Marcus was on his deathbed when he finally found his voice. The right moment is always now. In the end, the envelope that Marcus gave Violet did not just contain documents and revelations. It contained permission. Permission to grieve, to rage, to rebuild, and ultimately, to transform. What Marcus had given her was not wealth or power or revenge on those who had wronged her. He had given her something far more valuable, the understanding that she had always been enough, and the freedom to finally believe it. Sometimes the people who see us most clearly are the ones who remain in shadow. Sometimes love expresses itself through silence, protection, and the patient gathering of truth. And sometimes the greatest gift anyone can give us is not their presence, but their belief in our capacity to flourish without them. Violet had learned all of this from a man who had barely spoken a dozen words to her in 5 years. She would spend the rest of her life proving him right. And in the end, is that not the most beautiful kind of legacy? Not the monuments we build or the fortunes we accumulate, but the lives we touch, the potential we nurture, the fires we light in others that continue burning long after we are gone. Marcus Ashford died alone in a hospital bed, surrounded by wealth but starving for connection. But his story did not end with his death. It continued in every student who received a scholarship, in every child who found a safe place to dream, in every life that was transformed because he believed in a woman who needed someone to believe in her. And it continued in Violet herself, in the woman who walked out of the Ashford mansion with her head held high, in the mother's daughter who returned home to find herself again, in the founder who built something beautiful from the ashes of something broken. That is the truth the envelope contained. Not just secrets about an affair or a conspiracy, but a deeper truth about what matters in life. Not what we accumulate, but what we give away. Not who sees our worth, but whether we see it ourselves. Not the families we are born into, but the families we choose to build. Violet Torres had spent 5 years believing she was not enough. It took a dying man's letter to show her she had always been more than enough. And it took losing everything she thought she wanted before she could find everything she actually needed. If you are going through something similar, if you are trapped in a situation that makes you feel small, if you are surrounded by people who do not see your value, I want you to know something. You are enough, just as you are, right now. Reading these words, you do not need anyone's permission to become who you were meant to be. You do not need anyone's validation to know your worth. You do not need anyone's approval to build a life that reflects your true self. The only permission you need is your own. And if no one has told you that lately, let me be the one to say it. You are enough. You have always been enough. And the world is waiting for you to believe it. Thank you for watching until the end. I will see you in the next one.